And good afternoon, financial professionals. My name is John Florence. I am Senior Vice President of Marketing here at E4 Insurance Services, welcoming you to another edition of The Brew, where we build relationships every week. On today's Brew, we welcome back E4 Insurance Services, Brady Serold, who is our Senior Vice President for Disability Income Solutions. And Brady is coming back to finish up the third in our three-part series on disability income. Today, Brady is going to share with us how to really interpret and understand disability income quotes, as well as some of the high overview of some of the kinds of products that are available out there. Before we get started, please feel free to use the chat box to share your thoughts and questions. Also, all attendees are in a drawing for a CE card and a Starbucks gift card, which we will be announcing the winner at the end of this broadcast. So, Brady, we are back again, and this is the third of the series. It feels like it must feel like a marathon for you. There's a lot of tremendous information being given. So let's give it a little bit of a recap of where we've been. We've already had two pretty good sessions on DI, but remind us a little bit. We started talking about some of the whys and wherefores of disability income, and then we also looked at last week about sort of the challenges, or not the challenges, but the best ways to be able to get quality illustrations. But give us a little recap of where we've been and tell us where we're going today.
Yeah, thanks, John. Again, I think the biggest part in the disability world is, it's not so much the word disability. I think we talked about that the last couple of times. It's really about a plan if you get sick or hurt and can't work. And I think, all advisors should know their client's plan, and their clients should know their plan. Again, many people are under, a misnomer of what they have or don't have, or how it's going to work, or maybe it might not happen to them. But again, if it doesn't happen to them, great. But if something does happen to them, they need a plan if they get sick or hurt and can't work. And, it might involve insurance, or it might not involve insurance. We don't know until you investigate and give them that chance. Again, it's educate, advocate, and activate. Again, you can't, that's the three steps to it. You can really finding out what somebody's need is, and then where their sources of income going to come from, and then sit there and let them ponder. Okay, I don't know where my money is going to come from, and that's when the insurance comes into play. Again, last week, we talked about at the end, showed the guide for getting the best illustration. DI is a pretty hard product to underwrite. It's a very, profitable product from a agent standpoint in terms of compensation, but that's because it's not easy to get. I think a lot of agents don't talk about disability because, one, they're not comfortable with it. There are a lot of moving parts, and two, they had a bad experience with it. The first case they submitted got declined, and God forbid that's the last letter you want your client to get in the mail. So what we're trying to do here at E4 is really create that process to do the homework right up front, which is what we'll talk about here today, and then hopefully have the predictable outcome on the backside, and then kind of follow it up with here's the products and the carriers that we're working with in that space.
All right, that's a great overview, and thanks for reminding us of where we've been so far. So let's talk a little bit about the pre-screening process. This is different from other kinds of screenings that advisors probably are going to do if it comes to something like long-term care or even just regular life insurance cases. So what's different about the pre-screening process on DI that we should know about?
Yeah, really, there are three prongs to the DI policy. On the life insurance side, you pretty much have your health. You have that in the disability side as well. Depending upon your amount applied for on the life insurance side, you might have financial come into it, but very rarely does occupation come into it. So really, the last two are probably the more difficult ones. But then in the health side, you talk about morbidity versus mortality. So the big difference there. So first thing I want to talk about is a little bit of occupation and why that's important, because job title does not dictate what you do for a living. If you're a CPA, okay, well, pretty much we know what a CPA does. We know what a dentist does. We know what a pediatric, doctor does. But if you say, I own ABC Sanitation Company, I'm the president. What does that mean? If that's all you put on the application, I mean, that can be anywhere from, your local, you know, waste management type corporation where you have hundreds of employees and hundreds of trucks and you run all the things in Fargo or Madison or whatever city you're in. Or it could be the guy who owns a dump truck and goes around and hauls people's stuff away and does the lifting and hauling. But again, he's president of his own company, right? It's just a function of what you do for a living. So occupation is key. Part of the thing is people take a look at what occupations can't be insured. Well, I would say most of the time, if you're underground, like in mines, you're probably not insurable. If you're running into burning buildings for a living, as your fireman, you're probably not insurable for individual disability. If you carry a gun for a living, whether it's private protection or you're a police officer, it's harder to get disability, pure disability coverage. There are some options in there. You climb towers. Again, there are some occupations, like cleaning water towers and that sort of thing. You're doing cellular alignment for a power company. Those are occupations a little tougher to get, but most occupations you can get. But it's really understanding what the percentage of time you're doing, a number of employees you might have. So go back to painting the picture for the underwriter. You really want to paint the best picture of your client because you don't want them to guess. The second piece into that is the financial side of it. Again, if you're a W-2 employee with little to no incentive compensation, it's pretty easy. You can get their pay stub in last year's W-2, but when you start talking about business owners and some of our CPAs are a little bit more creative than others in how they report income, because again, nobody likes to pay taxes. And so they try to figure out how the best way to minimize taxes, especially for your small to medium-sized business owners. So understanding the tax documents, and that's something we can help with. With my underwriting background, I've looked at more tax returns than I care to ever look at in my life, but I understand, and it's all positioning with the underwriter and making sense, because again, you put things on paper and where did they take that loss? Did the business just start, did they have a big acquisition, or did they sell something off and had a big gain? Those are all things that can be one-time events that you can look at and get a little bit more information to make the underwriter feel comfortable about what we're presenting there. The other part about the financial side is other coverage. What do they have? I mean, do they have another personal policy? I mean, we can help evaluate that. Do they understand how it works? Is it how they want it to work? We can look at their group coverages. Some people have group coverage. I mean, like I said, 35% of all employers across the spectrum have long-term disability, group long-term disability. But is it taxable? Is it, what are the definitions? What's the defined covered earnings? I mean, all things that a lot of people don't know. You just have to get that 60-page summary plan document. We can review it in about 5 minutes. I can give you 5 or 6 bullet points on how their plan works based on how they're paid. Again, it's all educating and understanding where their funds are coming from. And the last part is health. It's for all the products we do, with the exception of annuities, you have health issues. What can disable you might not kill you. And I've had individuals who have been super preferred for life insurance be declined for disability insurance. And the agent comes back and it's all because they didn't ask the additional question. They just thought, oh, hey, I'm super preferred for life, I'm going to automatically get disability. Well, the individual I had, I said, okay, well, let me investigate it and take a look and see why they're declined. And I said, well, did you know that 2 months before they were talking to their doctor about how much they hated their job? It was a hostile work environment and they can't work there anymore, that it stresses them out every day when they come home. And that's a little problem for disability. Not so much a problem for life insurance, but definitely a big problem from a disability perspective. I mean, there's a lot of conditions that you can exclude on the disability side. Again, I'll maybe pause there for a second, John, but before we go into the possible outcomes of a disability case. But again, those are really the three key things that underwriters look at and carriers look at. And again, what we want to try to do is put all the pieces in our guide to getting the best illustration, touches on all those pieces so that we can get it out there. And number one, if we can get an offer, we have clear expectations of how that might come out at the end. And obviously the clearer it is and more it looks like what we talked about and you talked about to your client in the beginning, the higher the likelihood the case is going to get placed.
Yeah, all really great points. This is, substantially more moving parts than just sort of the typical pre-screening that you're going to see, which it might sound a little bit daunting to the advisor listening to this broadcast. But again, I think the reminder that we're trying to put in place is we have a great resource with you sitting in your chair, being able to help them through and help them to navigate and make sure that they're asking the right questions and getting the information needed to get a successful outcome.
Correct. And then the other part, if we're by chance are doing life insurance, I mean, we have access to all that information. And a lot of times an advisor will say, hey, I just did life insurance for this client, and I'll take a look at all the information, the exam, et cetera, that we've collected up to date, and can fill in a lot of those pieces that you don't have to go back to the client. And that's the other part is, when we're, we try to limit the number of times you have to go back to your client and ask for information. Again, getting all the pieces up front, again, it's easier to put it up front and send it into the carrier with a little bow on it. They really like that.
Well, any specific color of ribbon on the bow, or
Hey, it just depends on the carrier and the day, right? There's got to be a national color of bow day month or whatever.
So let's move on and talk about what happens after the pre-screening is done. What are the potential outcomes that can come out of all of the early and front-end legwork that you and an advisor are putting into a case?
Yeah. So again, what most carriers, I mean, and underwriters are out there to decline cases. I mean, I know some advisors think that that's what underwriters like to do, is they really makes them happy to decline cases. I mean, the truth is it's a waste of your time, a waste of our time, a waste of the carrier's time if you put in something that can't be done. So the best outcome is standard issue. So I've had agents go, why was he only issued standard? I'm like, well, standard is the best you can get for disability. So we don't have super preferred or ultra preferred or select or whatever, preferred select, and all the other things that the different life insurance carriers have. So the best disability rating is standard, which means coverage is issued as applied for. Then the next one, you go substandard issue. Now, it's not necessarily, but it could be like table rating. So there are additional premiums. So you can add a 25% rating, a 50% rating, or a 75% rating. After that, it gets real dicey on what can or can't be offered, and you may be better off going to a substandard carrier. But you also have exclusion riders. So again, if you have a bad back, like myself, I mean, I had L45 go out about 10 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, I don't know. Again, it's not as good as it used to be. So if I were to go out and have a disability product, they would probably put an exclusion rider on my low back. Okay, well, I'm covered for every other thing. I'm just not covered for something that's pre-existing. And I kind of like when you buy a used car and you have some dings in it, are you going to be able to turn it into your insurance carrier and get it all fixed? No, I mean, you already have a few dings in it. So you've accepted that risk. And that's kind of like what an exclusion rider does. And then there's also restrictions and modifications to coverage. So an underwriter may give you options, and that's the part where we can negotiate with the carrier. Maybe you wanted a 90-day elimination period, which is kind of your deductible. Maybe the carrier says, hey, with a 90-day elimination period, I have to limit the benefit period to 5 years and maybe put an exclusion on. But if we went to 180, I could do age 65. Again, that's an option you can go back to your client with to try to sell the case and see which direction they want to do. So, that's where, the carriers really try to be creative. And, unlike life insurance, I mean, I hate to say it, but there's not a lot of creativity when it comes to rating life insurance. I mean, it is. You have table ratings, and some carriers are better than others, but at least with the disability side, between elimination periods, benefit periods, exclusion riders, there's a lot of creativity that you can do to at least provide some offer. And you kind of look to the side as some offers better than no offer, because you've already determined that they have a need. They understand that they have a need. So whether that need is, maybe they need it to 65, but can only get it for 5 or 10 years. Well, that's better than nothing. So again, that's kind of the, when you position it, just how you hit it that way. Again, that's where we're really explaining the modified offer. And that's the part I think where we can really help is setting the advisor up to have that positive outcome with the client. And, even I can be involved in the call as well. I'm licensed and I'm appointed. I carry coverage. I've done this for a long time, but really it's explaining why it's modified. And a lot of times, if we've done the right thing up front, and I know, John, you had a bad back, and I've already told you you're probably gonna have an exclusion rider. If it comes out with an exclusion rider, it's nothing new to you because we've already had that discussion. Now, if I come back and say, hey, they're willing to do without a exclusion, now you can take credit as the advisor to say, hey, I got them to, it's been 10 years, you haven't had any problems, they're willing to go without it. Okay, well, that's even better than what we told you. So that's one thing. The other part is understanding potential for reconsideration. So there are some exclusions that can be reconsidered. So maybe you don't have a disc issue, but maybe you pulled some muscles in your back and you did physical therapy, and it was like within a year of taking the application. Okay, the carrier might say, okay, you go 2 years without having any issues, and we'll reconsider and remove the rider from it. So then they come back after 2 years, we submit it to the company, and they take that rider off, and it's covered like any other disability. So those are the type of things we can take a look at and talk any potential for reconsideration, and that can sometimes help place that that issue that you maybe had that's not a long-term lingering issue, but it's been in pretty recent history.
Yeah. So we've got standard, we've got substandard, and is that it? Or people could probably get declined, I could imagine.
Yeah, you have that last word, that bad word. Again, I say that's the one we try to prevent is the decline side of it. And sometimes we can prevent that up front. Sometimes there's things we don't know. I mean, even on the life insurance side, you've had people who come out and been a diabetic on their life insurance exam, and you just tell them you might have saved their life. Again, by sending them to their doctor and they didn't even know. So there are those instances. But there are some declines that, hey, maybe the carrier is just not willing to take a look at it because of certain things, but another carrier might, or maybe we move to a impaired risk type carrier who's maybe a little bit more willing to do it. Their products aren't as strong, but again, it's better than no solution. And sometimes we also, during the underwriting process, as we're paying attention and seeing what the carriers are coming back with and asking things. I mean, I've had told agents, I advise you to pull this application because it's going to get declined. I see information come out and it's like, okay, this is not headed down a path. And the last thing you want is your client to get that letter that says they've been declined, because now they're mad about a lot of things, especially, if the doctor says, you're your doctor and you're a diabetic. Well, doctor says I'm fine. Well, you're right. As long as you keep following and taking the medications and doing the right treatments and eating right and going and seeing your doctor, you are fine. But there's no guarantee in that. You're never going to get better. You can be stable. So again, that's the things we can come in and help you with is, we can really, make sure that, the outcome is positive, hopefully. And if it's not, we can pivot and move to another solution if one's available.
Yeah. So over the past three brewcasts, we have covered an awful lot of ground. Everything from the why and the how, through some of the details of the process of actually getting some policies placed. As we wrap up this series, what would you say are some tips or some good things that advisors can do so that we can ensure success and we can really help them through with this process? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, again, number one, work with our team. I think that's the biggest thing is you have resources who have done this, and I don't even know how many thousands of applications I've either looked at or processed in the different roles I've had, and there's nothing I haven't seen. So that helps you have a more positive outcome. And again, if you're positive about it and have that resource behind you, you're going to be more positive with your client, and your client's going to be more apt to take action. If you're hesitant, your client's probably going to be hesitant as well. The second thing, I'd say a cover letter. Not all cases require them, but a lot of the cases that we work on, and no one's taxes are the same. Everyone has some sort of health issue, and their occupations can be different. So it's helping paint that picture for the underwriter. And especially if we've done some pre-screening, we have the information in our files to go out to the carrier and say, hey, we've already talked to you about this. Here's all the things. And it does look like what we told you it looks like. So that's the other part, is the underwriter. When you have to take the application, submit tax documents, or even have us look at them up front. Because again, it's applying for the right amount. I've had people, guy get declined for disability because of financial information. And he goes, well, my client makes $200,000 a year. I'm like, no, your client makes negative $40,000 a year. 200,000 is their gross income, not his net income.
Mhm.
Well, when did you start underwriting on net income? I'm like, well, since they started underwriting in like 1951. You didn't like that answer, but again, that's really what it was. So again, getting that financial information up front, again, applying for what we should be doing. So again, if you're somebody's advisor, you should have access to their tax documents, because again, number one, there's a lot of things in those tax documents that you can help for tax efficiencies as an advisor. And then again, including a copy of the DI illustration, understanding what you're applying for, just making it clear, because there's a lot of boxes on insurance applications. And, we want to make sure that the insurance company is underwriting what we want them to underwrite, not what we think we want them to underwrite. Because the worst thing to do is get an offer from the company and say, oh, did I put $1,000 in there? I meant 10,000. Well, now they're humans and they make mistakes, and they get a chance to go back and take a look at it. So again, let's set that expectation up right up front. Also, a little different than life insurance. The forms for DI either follow the state of residence or the state they work in, and/or. So, pardon me. So again, that's a big issue. Well, life insurance, I mean, they can, if somebody came and visited you in Wisconsin and they were from Florida, you write them on a Wisconsin app, right? You can't do that for disability. If they live and work in Florida, you have to write it in Florida. And the other big thing is making sure you have an active health and accident license in that state, whether it's resident or non-resident. Again, the health and accident is what allows you to sell disability insurance. And there are many states that have a separate health and accident license from their life side. So just on making sure up front that you have the right licenses, because again, if you fill out an application and you don't have the license, guess what? You got to fill out the application again. So again, just those are a few tips to, from that standpoint. But again, work with our team, and again, part of that, we can help investigate that on NIPR and see the licensing and make sure you have everything up front. So that's part of the service that we provide. Again, I think, John, here's what I say: proper expectations and clear communications equal positive outcome and a positive advisor client experience.
Those are great words for living, not just for DI, but for just about everything that we do. So, Brady, this has been really, really informative over these past couple of weeks together, doing these sessions on disability income. And I know that there's going to be a lot more coming down the pipe in the future for those who are on this call and in this meeting, and you'll be seeing that coming from E4 in the weeks and months ahead. So we want to thank you for taking the time and to giving us the benefit of your experience and expertise. And we really hope that those who hear this have an opportunity to reach out to you and bring the cases that they have the potential to work on, so that we can get some successful outcomes as we move forward. So this is the time when we open it up for questions. So I would remind you that you can use the chat box to ask any questions that you may have for Brady. And while we are waiting to see if there are any questions, we would just like to remind everybody that today's brew, as well as all of our brewcasts, are recorded, and they're shared on the Brew blog at our website, as well as on our YouTube channel at E4 Insurance Services. Now, Brady, for the giveaway, for our gift, please pick a number between 1 and 23.
We're going to hit 3 today.
3, and that is great. And our winner is Edward Edward B. I don't know who the B is, but Edward, if you can just maybe put that into the chat so we know who to send those to. But congratulations on the win. Be on the lookout for the gift voucher for the CE, as well as the Starbucks gift card coming your way from all of us here at E4 Insurance Services. Next week, we'd like you to join us as we welcome E4's very own VP of Institutional Accounts, Steve Walker. Steve is one of our most popular Brew presenters, and he will be back with us discussing a case study that started as one opportunity for key person insurance, and that conversation led to transitioning into an opportunity into personal estate planning, as well as other opportunities that opened up from that. So how do you take a single opportunity and turn it into multiples? And that's what Steve will be sharing with us next week on The Brew. Thanks for all of you for being here today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.